Digital storytelling, a presentation. Once, on an island in the sea, there lived a girl called Becca. Becca was ambitious and wanted to leave her island to work in a library or a museum. To do this, she decided she needed to complete a master's degree. Part of this master's degree involved completing a project, which would take 6 months and would involve loads of research, effort, and determination. Becca was quite nervous about this prospect, and it was only after a chat with her supervisor Kate that she was able to come up with a topic. Becca decided that her project would be part of a larger project her university had already designed for improving digital literacy in high school students, and she chose to work on digital storytelling. Becca knew that her project would involve teaching high school kids to create their own digital stories. She thought that it would be interesting to incorporate into their stories the manga art that the kids had already created in their school's Manga Club. Given that Becca's island was so far away from the high school she would be designing these workshops for, getting there would prove to be really difficult, and so Becca decided that creating 3 instructional videos that would teach the kids how to go about creating a digital story would be something that she could really sink her teeth into. Of course, teaching the kids how to go about creating these digital stories would inevitably increase their digital and visual literacy skills and thus would kill 2 birds with 1 stone. In order to properly design these digital stories and to adequately understand the theory behind using them in educational contexts, Becca started her project by conducting an environmental scan throughout Australia and internationally to see what other high schools and public libraries had been doing in this area. She used Google to perform a number of different searches in a number of different libraries and schools around the world. In doing this search, Becca discovered that digital storytelling is a fairly recent addition to the curriculum in high schools in Australia, given that the technology itself has only really come into common use in the last few years or so. There was, therefore, quite a lot of information available for teachers looking to use digital storytelling in their classrooms. Public and state libraries had also successfully utilised digital storytelling in oral history projects that displayed local histories in really interesting and personal ways. Obviously, this was very helpful for Becca's project. After the success of the environmental scan, Becca decided to conduct a search through a database for more academic articles to provide a bit of background information on digital storytelling, the technologies and applications it uses, and the educational context it can be used for. Her findings basically all said the same thing, that using Web 2.0 technologies to design stories written by students about topics they are interested in enhanced their visual, written, and digital literacy skills and provided them with a creative way of expressing themselves. Becca also searched Google for the various programs that were available to use to create digital stories and designed a table so that she could see the pros and cons of each program, the features they had, and whether or not they were available for free. This was so she could determine the best program to use herself, as well as the best one to recommend to the students. It was quite effective and really came in handy later when it came to developing the second instructional video. Engaging with the students as an instructor was something Becca was a little uneasy about. After all, she had never made a digital story herself before and had no real teaching experience, so there was a real possibility that she could completely muck it up. Through her initial environmental scan through Google, Becca had discovered several how-to documents for teachers who wanted to teach their students how to create digital stories. Thinking them relevant, she decided to adapt a few of those plans to use herself. She also decided then that she would familiarise herself with iMovie, a program she had planned to use to create her instructional videos since it came with her MacBook laptop already. She watched a number of YouTube videos that explained how to add still images, how to add an audio voiceover, and how to export the movie to YouTube. After watching these videos, she still felt a bit apprehensive about the task, but her confidence in using the program and in instructing others how to use it had definitely grown. Finally, Becca had come to the creative part of the process. She searched through Flickr for Creative Commons licensed images that would be relevant to her videos and downloaded them. She then designed a series of storyboards to map out her videos and placed her images within them, in the order in which she wanted them to appear. She then wrote out a basic script for each section and added those to the storyboards as well. Once the storyboards were finished, she sent them to Kate for feedback. Next, Becca set about dragging her images into the iMovie timeline. When she was happy with the layout of her movie, she added the audio track and then synced her images with her audio. The process of creating the videos was quite long and tedious, and Becca nearly gave up at one point when she couldn't figure out how to sync the audio and the images together so that the images all played for different lengths of time. A quick email to Kate quickly solved this dilemma, and Becca discovered that using the iMovie program and creating the digital stories themselves wasn't quite as difficult as she had thought. It was, however, much more time-consuming than she had anticipated. Becca persevered with her task, and eventually, after much editing, frustration, and pleas for help, her digital stories were finally complete. She added them to her own personal YouTube channel so she could share them with Kate and hopefully embed them wherever they're required later. Now, the hard part began. As part of her project, Becca also had to complete a final report. As a more practical report, it would be a lot shorter than those of Becca's classmates, and its structure would be quite different too. Becca was a little worried about the content of the report as well. The information she had gathered from her initial environmental scan and the following database search was more than enough to enable her to properly create digital stories, but she felt like something was missing. Becca thought for a while of what she could possibly add that would make her report more interesting or more relevant. The only thing that came to mind was critical feedback about the videos she had designed and the content of those videos, particularly if they were informative enough to help the kids to create their stories. If she had had more time, Becca would have waited to write her report until after the high school kids had watched her videos and created their own digital stories, so she could receive feedback on how successful her videos were. All in all, though, this did not overly affect her final report, and Becca's confidence that she could finish writing it and the literature review by the deadline paid off. She was finally able to finish her final report and her literature review, which she added to the report as an appendix. Becca was excited to finally complete her project, as it meant that she could hopefully graduate from her degree and finally leave her island. As always, all images used in this movie have a Creative Commons license attached and were taken from the following Flickr accounts. And this concludes the digital storytelling presentation.